Seal Test, yeah, just rolled out a new product, a new milk. 6% milk. Not 2, not skim, not 3, 3.5, 3.8, 6% milk fat. I love how they describe it. This is Seal Test's own wording, right? Naturally rich and smooth, Seal Test 6% is crafted to satisfy and delight every palate. It brings both versatility and quality to the kitchen. Discover the pure, delicious taste of high-fat milk, offering a luxuriously creamy texture, unquote. Kim Ari is a registered dietitian and nutritionist and is on the line. Kim, thanks so much for coming on today. I think most people's first reaction to this would be, wait a sec, what? I thought the whole idea was we recognized we want to put a limit on these kinds of fatty things. But then again, I know Robert F. Kennedy, U.S., right? The whole idea now is let's go back to high-fat milk. What do you think of this?
Well, my first reaction was kind of like yours, which is like, oh my, why? And apparently there could be a lot of reasons, but nutrition is probably not the highest one on the list. I'm not a real fan, but nutritionally I'm not a fan, but it's okay. There's a lot of things I'm not a fan of as a dietitian that other people like to include, and we have to find a way to do it. Apparently, South Asian population find this type of milk really popular, and apparently it's really good in some recipes, makes great yogurt, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So maybe it's a good idea for specific population, specific foods.
Okay. I heard that, South Asian thing as well, and I thought, okay, if that's part of the diet you had and you come here, now you can no longer find that. I'm like, that's not really far off where cream is at 10%.
No, but cream is only fat, and so it doesn't bring any of the nutrients. This does have milk, this is milk, so you're still getting the protein, you're still getting the carbohydrate, you're still getting the vitamin D, that kind of thing, which you're not going to get from the cream. You're still getting your riboflavin, your B12, which you're not going to get as much from your cream. You're basically just getting fat from the cream. So there's a huge difference, even though the fat content is not that different.
Okay, so again, with respect to, you're not drinking this necessarily every day, although maybe, as you said, some people in their diets were used to this, where they happen to be from. Would you sort of advise against this? I mean, you're reading this story and you're thinking, well, if it's good enough, for some people, maybe I should give this a try. So you're saying you can't recommend it from a nutritional point of view, but can you have this every now and then? If you're drinking regular milk anyway, what would be wrong with this?
Well, so the biggest issue is we're concerned that the amount of saturated fat in your diet will increase your risk of heart disease. Now, we know we have a lot of studies. There was a big review article that was published last year, or 2 years ago rather, and it was talking about the fat in cheese and fermented milk products, so cheese, kefir, and that kind of thing. And even when you're having full-fat cheeses and kefir, it seems actually have a positive outlook. If we look at all-cause mortality, the more cheese and yogurt you're eating, the lower your all-cause mortality is. So, but we don't think it's quite the same for milk because the matrix is a little bit different. So my thing is, if you want to have this regularly, then I have to look at where else are you getting saturated fat in your diet from, and are you willing to make a compromise on that? Are we able to come and reach a deal that, okay, well, I'm not going to be eating any meat anymore, so I can have high-fat milk, and I'll get my saturated fat from the milk, and I'm only going to have lentils and chickpeas and that kind of stuff to get my protein. And that, if that works for you, then that's fine. But if you say, no, I also want to eat meat and I also want to have all these other foods that have a lot of saturated fat, then I get a little concerned.
Okay, so this is really kind of a find a middle ground sort of routine, right?
That's what you do with everybody's diet, right? Is we always have to find a middle ground, a way to meet the recommendations and a way to make you happy, get your taste buds happy, right? Because that's really what we try to do for all our clients.
Sure, because that becomes consistency and that's the easiest thing to maintain.
Exactly.
Okay. So I would ask, I mentioned Robert F. Kennedy, right? We had a whole thing on the food chart that came out a couple of months ago. What do you think about this whole idea that we need more meat and dairy in our plates?
I don't understand where they're coming from at all. We're looking at all the data that we've had over the last 40 years at least that is saying the exact opposite. When we look at the longest living populations in the world, the populations in the blue zones, they're not eating more meat. They may be eating it more well divided during the day. They're not eating more meat, and they're not drinking or eating more dairy than we are. It might be divided differently, but all the studies we have show that a more plant-based diet is going to help you to live longer, healthier life. So it doesn't make any sense that now we're saying no, eat more meat and have more dairy, and what about the plants and those other things? There's no mention of that, or not a lot.
You know, the problem is people will hear something like that or see something like that and decide, well, if it's coming from, that source, and maybe it's worth a try. But as you just said, there's no basis in fact for this. So it's kind of hard to imagine why this is happening, I guess. Right?
It is, but, I see a lot of people who do what I call a leap of faith science that are attracting a large following. And I think it is true that some people in our populations, for example, seniors, need to focus on their protein intake because they tend not to eat enough protein. But we don't tend to have that happening in other groups of the population. We do have a lot of people who are getting a lot of their nutrition. We've got studies saying that young children or young adolescents are getting 50 to 60% of their calories from ultra-processed foods. And I wish I could say it was at least, something that had protein in it and maybe some breading on it or something. But a lot of it is just from chips and candy and stuff that doesn't have a lot of nutritional value. So yes, we have to make sure they do get their protein. But I don't think we have to eat more than the current daily or the previous recommendations. I think we just have to remember to actually meet those recommendations.
We will leave it at that. Kim, very much appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.